In 2011, after the approval of the prohibition of corporal punishment, teachers were prohibited from physically punishing students. It became very hard for teachers to guide the students. Even if a student violates school policy, there is little that the faculty could do in order to discipline them. The students were smarter than the adults thought. They knew how to use the law for their own benefit. As a result of a survey of 1196 teachers nationwide, 85.8% of teachers said that teaching became very difficult after the law was introduced. One day, when the problems of school authority and classroom collapse were pointed out, a teacher was killed by a student during class. This made the National Assembly and the Ministry of Education aware of the seriousness of an educational collapse. However, due to an ongoing celebrity scandal, the attention of the media was off the education system, and because of this, the Ministry of Education was able to pass the amendment to the Education Rights Protection Act without backlash. The story now jumps ahead to 2013. A second-year student named Park Dae-suk's body was unexpectedly discovered by Kim Kyung-min, a first-year who was just like any other student. Dae-suk had unalived himself as a result of ongoing bullying. At school, he was used as a punching bag, and people referred to him as an exhibition. Nobody knew for sure what his true intentions were, even with that moniker. Kyung-min was the first person to find the body, and the moment he noticed it, he laughed. He was having trouble believing it and wondering if he was a psychopath. Kyung-kim, too, was bullied at school. The bullies kicked him, pinched him, and even sat on him. The bullies created a contest in which the winner was the person who made him scream the loudest on a decibel scale after hurting him. He says that if the loser of the second grade was Dae-suk, then he was the loser of the first grade. The first time he was bullied, he spoke up and told the teacher about it. However, the teacher only gave the bullies a simple lecture and did not take any significant action against them. While walking back to their benches, the bullies glared at Kyung-min. He was thereby promoted from loser to legendary loser. Not long later, he came to know the answer to why the teachers took no action against the bullies. During the recess, he spots a few teachers criticizing the corporal punishment law passed by the Education Ministry. They claimed that they were helpless and that they were compelled to hide in that manner constantly. Then Kyung-min's class teacher abruptly arrived. He said that the corporal law was rather convenient for him. If anything goes wrong, the parents get involved and everything goes to sh*t. So it was easier to not get involved in incidents with the students and just teach. He further adds that the students' problems were not their problems and it was not their headache to solve them. Kyung-min knew no one was on his side after hearing that. Only two options remained for him. Either he changed schools or put up with it for the ensuing 3 years. But then he thought the situation might change. After the senior's death, the police had started to investigate his death, and the fact that he was severely bruised was something the entire student body knew. He thought that the police would uncover the truth and jail those bastards. But it didn't go as he thought. Not long after the investigation, he heard some other students say that the death was due to the pressure of studies and not bullying, and thus bullies weren't stopped. They continued to bully Kyung-min until one day, when he actually committed suicide himself. A man asks him from behind not to commit suicide, as he is about to. The man responds that he was too lazy to explain when Kyung-min inquires if he was a teacher. He further asks the man why he was sitting on the roof. So the man replies that he could observe the whole school from there and asks Kyung-min to guide him to the classroom. On his way to the classroom, the man asks him why he would ever attempt suicide and adds that he would have to put up with bullying or poor grades for the next 3 years on his own if that were the case. Kyung-min replies that he wouldn't understand his situation. He says that he wouldn't even last another day at the school. The man looks shocked after listening to what he said. Suddenly, the bully attacks Kyung-min, constantly beating him. When the man can no longer bear to watch Kyung-min being beaten, he seizes the bully and begins correcting him. He grabs the bully by his hair and slaps him hard on the face. The bully tries to convince him that beating him further would be considered illegal and asks all his friends to record the man as soon as possible. Without hesitance, he immediately starts beating the bully once more until the teachers and the principal arrive to look into the matter. The principal quickly asks for the man's identity and asks him why he was beating the student. The man tosses his ID to the principal. He was Waji Na from the Bureau of Education. His responsibility is to turn around failing educational institutions run by inept jerks, perhaps including the principal, who colludes with law enforcement to hide all the bullying and student killings. Later in the office, the principal seems to be trying to convince that late Dae-suk unalived himself because of sexual frustrations and that he was misunderstanding the whole incident. He further adds that the school does not tolerate any kind of violence and was deemed as the most excellent school few years ago, and their school had also produced excellent graduates. The principal asks Wajin to talk with the Ministry of Education and proceeds to bribe him. Wajin strikes his foot on the envelope and tells the principal that he was a member of the Ministry of Education, but he does not have a teacher's license, which means he does not have the ability nor the authority to judge the school. While leaving the scene, Wajin warns the principal and the vice principal to stop acting the way they did and asks them what grade and class Dae-suk was in. Meanwhile, in the class 2-5, a thug was bullying an innocent student. He forced him to choke on alcohol and punched him when he couldn't drink it. He criticized him for not being able to drink to save his life. Suddenly, the bully was interrupted by Junhyung. He asked the bully to stop that and start cleaning the mess he had created before the bell rang. The bully replies that he was doing all this for him as he was still hungover. Junhyung replies that he does not care if he gets caught because his father was a high-ranking lawmaker. The classroom was filled with chattering when suddenly Wajin entered the room and introduced himself. He said that their homeroom teacher, Mr. Burden, caught a bad flu, so he had to take few weeks off of school, therefore he will be taking classes in absence of him for the time being. He told the students that it was his first time teaching and he looks forward to it. The class didn't seem to pay attention to what he had said, so he starts with the attendants to familiarize the students' faces. After taking few names, he stumbles upon Park Dae-suk's name. The class gets completely silent for a moment. Upon asking the students where he was, Kim Hak-jae replies that he unalived himself by jumping off the building due to sexual pessimism. Wajin glares at him and continues to call attendance. He suddenly notices that Park Byung-soo's face was red, and he looked sick. When he confronted him, Kim Hak-jae shouts that Byung-soo drank a bottle of soju just before class and further jokes about him. Wajin suddenly approaches and smells his silhouette. He asks him whether he was drinking with Byung-soo and further adds that he smelled like someone who is still hungover from last night's drinks. Kim Hak-jae loses his cool and shouts at him. Wajin asked him with a death glare whether he had unalived Park Dae-suk in the first place. After hearing this, Kim Hak-jae charges at Wajin furiously, but Wajin grabs his lips and smashes him on the wall. Wajin right away asks the class rep to take Byung-soo to the nurse's office and lay him on the bed. Wajin explains to the students that he had analyzed the school from the past day. He found that there were 3 cultural breaks in the school. First, the teachers were treated like dogs. Second, bullying was all over the place, and third, even after a classmate unalived himself, the uncritical satisfaction of the school will lead to the same thing happening again. He introduces himself again as every student has his attention now. He is Na Wajin, the field supervisor from the Office of Protection under the Ministry of Education. He further adds that, after the establishment of the Office of Protection, this school has been chosen as the first case. He tells the students that if they were curious about the reason behind the creation of the organization, search up Iljan Lawful True Education on YouTube. He glares at the students and tells them that all the bullying and the case of Dae-suk were the result of their own actions. Wajin walks past Junhyung and opens the classroom door with a kick just to find the principal and the vice principal peeping from the windows. When Wajin confronts them, they replied that they just wanted to learn what kind of teaching methods does someone from the Department of Education uses and nothing important. He also wanted to warn Wajin about something. The principal whispers to Wajin stating that the student named Ryu Junhyung sitting at the back is the son of a well-known congressman. After listening this, Wajin fakes his excitement. The principal says that he is not going against the supervisor's education policy, rather he was wondering about the repercussion Wajin might face if he punishes him. Wajin exclaims that he made a huge mistake and he messed up big time, which might make the third-term congressman very upset. He further thanks the principal for the kind information. While talking to the principal, Wajin grabs Junhyung's face and tells the principal that kids are easily swept away by the atmosphere, so if someone as high as him was seen acting like he is bending to someone else behind the scenes, they might think about the principal as an actual dog. Junhyung deliberately cried to free himself, however, he faints after not being able to free himself. Wajin warns the principal that if he was going to get in the way in order to regain the teaching authority of the school, he will receive Wajin's way of education as well. Before leaving the place, Wajin orders the vice principal to gather all the staffs together at the gym right away as he had an announcement to make. A week after Wajin's arrival, there have been a lot of changes in the school. Teachers were now able to freely humble the bullies without thinking about the government stepping into the matter. It became a competition. The troublesome students were taught in an extraordinary way. Those who didn't embrace the sudden change were taken care by Wajin himself. He took the students into a room, and when they got out, the students became a completely new person. After a while, Kim Hak-jae was ranting about the changes that have been introduced to the school and asked Jun Hyung to do something about it. He asked him to call his father to get the violence up on the news. However, Jun Hyung furiously asked him to stop making a fuss as his father said that it was the first trial run conducted by the Ministry of Education, so he could do nothing about it. Even if it comes to the news, the Education Ministry has already prepared a scenario to deal with the press, and the bill was passed by the ruling part, therefore his father could do nothing much about it. There's also a myriad public opinion on the internet that bullies should be beaten up. Suddenly, Byung-soo appears as Jun Hyung had asked him to visit them on the rooftop earlier. Jun Hyung grins and claims that the tables have already turned. Moments later, Wajin spots Kim Kyung-min with noodles in his hands. He asked him whether he was still running errands for others, to which he replied that it was actually his food. They both sit together and chat for a bit. Wajin asks if the school is worth it now. Kyung-min replies that he really likes to go to school now as there are no more bullies thanks to Wajin, but he adds that it's very unfortunate that once you're gone things will slowly get back to the way it has been before. Wajin smacks him on the back and tells him that he has a plan and not to worry about it. Byung-soo approached Wajin all beaten up asking for help. He says that he might actually die if things keep escalating like this. Wajin gets up and asks Byung-soo to come with him. He will listen to what he has to say. Byung-soo recalls what Jun Hyung asked him to do, and he pulls out a knife from nowhere and stabs Wajin. After getting stabbed on his side, Wajin grabs Byung-soo's hand and twists it while pulling the knife out off his body with his other hand. Wajin tells him that the stab was not deep enough and orders him to follow him to the special counseling office. He pushed Byung-soo onto the wall and closes the door. Inside the room, Wajin asks him to sit. He strips open his own shirt and hands Byung-soo a mirror. He asks him to point the mirror to the wound. While stitching the wound, Wajin interrogates him about the person who ordered him to do such a crime, as there was clearly no killing intent involved. Byung-soo loses his cool and shouts that no one had ordered him to stab Wajin. Wajin furiously smashes the knife between Byung-soo's fingers and tells him that not revealing the person who ordered him could lead to being locked up in the jail for attempted murder. He tells him that if he didn't know who was scarier, he will show it to him. Moments later, he decides to let him go and says that even when a person is given a change, they just blow it off, as people like them don't change even if there's someone who is willing to help them out. After hearing all this, Byung-soo shouts that he cannot tell him anything as he might get killed because of that. He adds that unlike him, Dae-suk was an insider who studied well and got along with other students. On the other hand, Jun Hyung hanged out with seniors. He has been like that since he entered the school, which was dominated by bullies. Jun Hyung and Dae-suk weren't interested in each other as their domains were completely different, so they never bumped into each other until a certain incident happened. The teacher was fed up with Jun Hyung as he kept his feet raised on the desk. So the teacher decides to confront him. Jun Hyung glares at the teacher and tells her to stop being so cheeky and threat her that he will call his father's assistant to take her job from her possession. He tried to land a hit on the teacher, however, Dae-suk knocked him out before he could land a hit. Ever since that day, Dae-suk's school life began twisting. The bullies started beating him up and everyone started considering him an outcast whom they beat up once every single day. He was no more treated like a human being. It wasn't just him. His father, who worked as an interior designer in the government offices, got his job cut off from work all of a sudden. After days of getting bullied, he asked Jun Hyung why he wouldn't stop yet because he had already destroyed him and his family, to which he replies that he won't stop this until Dae-suk unalives. Soon after, he unalived himself. The teachers took the lead in shutting everyone's mouths. The police didn't even include Jun Hyung on the suspect list. Byung-soo claims that Jun Hyung is like a king in the school and he was the reason why Dae-suk unalived himself. He suspected himself as the next victim of Hyung's bully. Byung-soo notices that Wajin acted as if he was long asleep. He asks Byung-soo why he was hesitant to say that he was scared of just a kid. Byung-soo loses his cool and starts shouting, but he points his phone to his face and shows him something. He tells him that it is a great day to live. Moments later, Jun Hyung's friends noticed that only a single ambulance was called and the police weren't involved. Junhyung says that he did not expect much from Byung-soo and that he had more mischiefs prepared for the next day. Suddenly a shout caught the attention of the bullies. It was Wajin and Byung-soo. Wajin says that isn't Rooftop the national skipping place in Republic Korea? The bullies threaten Byung-soo that he would end up like Daesuk if he still sided with Wajin. Wajin tell Byung-soo to do as he taught him to. He punched Junhyung, which knocks him out. As a response, the other two charges at Byung-soo, but Wajin deals with them in no time. Wajin compliments as the punch he landed was very powerful. Junhyung threatened him that he is going to kill him when suddenly Byung-soo pulls out the phone and shows the news. Junhyung's father was being cancelled for bribery and harassment. Wajin grins at Junhyung as he was lying down completely hopeless. Seeing Junhyung on the ground completely confused, Kim Hak-jae approaches him with a death glare and asks to about the situation. The story is now taken back to the past of Junhyung, who was treated like a garbage in his house by his father. Since his grades weren't good, he was an unbelievable embarrassment for his father, a local congressman and lawmaker. But however, this wasn't the case outside his house. In his class, he was treated like a king by the teachers and the students due to his father's post. Everyone bowed down to him because of his father, and he completely enjoyed that act. He enjoyed his power in the school. However, there was a single problem. The person he used to bully had unalived himself, and he was scared that if his father gets to know about this incident, he will be in huge problem. When he was asked to meet the officers in the counseling room, he was shocked, but once he got inside, he realized that he will be forgiven for anything he does in the school because of his father's authority. He started considering himself a king, and the school was his domain. Back to the present, he however does not hold any power in the school anymore. He now grieves about his current situation. Kim Hak-jae shouts at him and claims that he is nothing without his father's authority. Junhyung shouts that nobody saw his father go to jail, and even if he is in jail, they will free all the allegations on him within few months, and then Junhyung will bury all of Hak-jae's lackeys. Hak-jae spits on Jun's face and leaves the scene. After experiencing this, Junhyung claims to unalive all these people. Hyunjin appears and says that they were too loud and that he couldn't concentrate at all. He notices Junhyung and tells him that he has lost everything he had just because his father's post got ruined, and he taunts him for not making good friends in the school. Enraged by what Hyunjin just spoke, he shouts at him for being a terrible teacher. Wajin then turns to him and says that he does not hold authorities in the school from today onwards, and the school will be back to normal like before. After Wajin left the school's traditional culture was revived. Student bullies were back, but this time their target was Junhyung, who was made the outcast of the second grade. However, this all didn't end in the school either. He was being beaten up by his father in his house because the clip where Junhyung was seen raising his hand on the teacher has gone viral on the internet, and people are making comments on the brutal activity. The news anchor says that Junhyung continued being brutal to the teachers and the students by using the authority of his father, and as a result he drove a student to unalive himself. A man walks in the room and tells his father that a lot of news reports have flooded the front of his house, to which the congressman replies to not let a single person inside and proceeded to beat Junhyung. Later that night, out of depression, Junhyung breaks in the school and starts to spread gasoline all over the school. He says that he will burn all those who worked against him the next morning. He suddenly gets kicked on his chest, which makes him fall down on the floor and completely covered in gasoline. It was Wajin. He tells Junhyung that he has diluted to bones and he still doesn't get what he had done wrong. He tells him that his true education will now begin. Ryu Junhyung gets caught by Na Wajin while he was pouring the gasoline on the school premises. He is shocked to encounter him and asks about his presence here. Na Wajin is trying to light his cigarette and playing with the lighter. Ryu Junhyung screams with fear to turn off the lighter since he has gasoline all over him. He drops his lighter onto the ground by saying that isn't he trying to do something like the same. Ryu Junhyung is terrified to see the lighter falling on the ground with gasoline. He screams when he sees the gasoline catches fire, and he quickly gets up from the ground and tries to escape the fire, slips and falls on the ground, and looks at the fire blazing towards him. He goes into a traumatized state and screams to save him and that he is sorry for everything. Na Wajin quickly starts using the fire extinguisher, spraying it all over him and on the fire. After the fire is put off, he throws away the fire extinguisher and says to Ryu Junhyung that he is sure that he might have realized that unlike what is shown in the movies, gasoline flames are slow in spreading. He leans towards the trembling Ryu Junhyung and says his opinion that truth is revealed through actions. not words. He explains that the reason he ran is that he instinctively realized that the flames were slow. Na Wajin grabs him by the collar and points out that his actions have made others' lives miserable, referencing the people he bullied in the past and the events that unfolded at home. Na Wajin asserts that Ryu Junhyang will understand what he has done to others when the shoe is on the other foot. He believes that true education comes from taking responsibility for one's actions. Na Wajin pushes him back and states that Park Dae-sung will never return, no matter how much regret he holds in his heart. Walking away, Na Wajin leaves Ryu Junhyang to suffer the burden of his demise forever. After hearing this, Ryu Junhyang starts screaming and crying loudly. Mr. Na Wajin appears on the news the next day, having gone public with his records of his school experiences. He presents proof of Ryu Junhyang's crimes, leading to the police arresting other upperclassmen for bullying Dae-sung. That afternoon, Junhyang's father is excommunicated from his political party and announces his retirement as a lawmaker, unable to withstand the pressure of public opinion. The public learns about Na Wajin's teaching style, sparking controversy over the introduction of corporal punishment in classes. A student at the school watches the events unfold on his phone. He thinks about the many people who opposed the idea without knowing the full story and wonders what Na Wajin is doing now. A car exits a building, with a secretary briefing about a list of questions prepared by journalists for an upcoming interview. She stresses the importance of preparing their responses carefully, given the state crisis over the education scandal. She notes that this is a good opportunity to demonstrate worthiness to the public, even though it will be a tough battle. As she begins to outline the first question, the old man pauses and tells her to put it away. He insists it is not good style to plan responses like a weasel for such controversy. He declares that he will tackle it head-on, confident in the brand image of a manly man Chae Kong-suk is building, and that he is not scared by the reporter's questions. The driver stops the car abruptly upon seeing a man standing in the middle of the road. When the secretary questions his actions, the driver identifies the man as former Congressman Ryu Gwang-pil. The old man gets out of the car to handle the situation, but the secretary insists she will manage. Ryu Gwang-pil angrily questions Kong-suk, asking if he is the one who exposed his affair. He further accuses him of treating him as an outcast, despite them being in the same party. He screams, questioning why Kong-suk has done this to him, recalling their days as classmates and sharing meals together. Kong-suk, pointing his cigar at Ryu Gwang-pil, says that Ryu used to appear on the news acting like a complete buffoon. Now he comes to him for help and also accuses him. He claims that Ryu Gwang-pil doesn't understand his actions and tells him that he failed to raise his son properly. Chae Kong-suk is an old man with a 26-year political career, serving as the 6th senator in the National Assembly and a former post representative, currently the head minister of education. Chae Kong-suk, a 69-year-old man who began his political career at 43, is known for his harsh approach and direct attacks on opponents, often disregarding his image. His style of attention-grabbing is acknowledged by many, and he is known for his hatred towards reporters. He climbs the dais and asks the reporters to proceed quickly, reminding them of his style. Chae Shin-woo of Goryeo News Report starts his questions about a law that was established 2 years ago, which allows teachers unrestricted access to any method to provide guidance for students. Kong-suk responds by questioning why the inquiry is 2 years late, accusing news outlets of focusing on celebrity PR. He says that those at the Bureau made a decision to give against corrupt school systems and to assist teachers is guiding them. He does not concur with corporal punishment. Another reporter from Rooftop News references his statement that this policy cannot be compared to corporal punishment. Kong-suk dismisses this comparison, noting that schools have improved since faculty authority was introduced. Another reporter from the Weekend S report claims to have the results of an investigation, which says that bruises appeared on various students, a result of physical discipline. He replied that their efforts in protecting the students resulted in this situation and that lead to a student committing suicide. Their experiment has dealt with the tumors amongst the students and staff and that few bruises aren't that bad. The priority should be the protection of students who earn respect through education and hard work. He thrashes the journalists to focus of the truth only, and that is their job, protected by the rights of freedom. And on the record, until he, Chae Kong-suk is in the office. Any opposition to this plan will be overcome. He asked parents not to call his office and any first interview requests are ignored. Na Hwa-jin watches the broadcast on his cell phone while sitting in front of a grave, pondering how Kong-suk became the 6th senator. Suddenly, a voice behind him asks if he is human. He smiles and calls the person Dad, who is Chae Kong-suk. Kong-suk immediately kicks him and demands to know who he is calling Dad. As Na Hwa-jin bows before the grave, Kong-suk eats the crackers left as an offering, complaining about their expensive taste. Na Hwa-jin mentions that they are Jae-yoon's favorite and that Kong-suk should know this as her father. Na Hwa-jin asks about the outcome of the conference, having seen part of it on his phone. He notes that reporters and parents seem ready to battle together. Kong-suk asserts that there is nothing he can't do if he puts his mind to it. While both look at Ji-yoon's grave, Na Hwa-jin wonders what she would think of all this. Kong-suk replies that grudges are for the living, not the dead. As they prepare to leave, Na Hwa-jin tells Kong-suk to go ahead, since he has his next assignment at Sanmik School for Advanced Education. The headmaster's personal request indicates an entertaining situation to resolve. Na Hwa-jin enters the school and climbs the stairs, wondering what kind of chaotic situation awaits him. As he reaches the next floor, he sees 2 students fighting fiercely, trading blows and hurling abuse at each other. Other students run away in fear of getting caught in the brawl. In the corridor, 2 gangs confront each other, exchanging insults before engaging in one-on-one fights, calling each other electricians and car wash employees. Witnessing this scene, Na Hwa-jin rejoices that he has to stop the gang war all by himself. Ever since he was young, Hyung-ju liked cars, or anything that had wheels, be it a toy car or a RC car or a truck. He had already decided what he wanted to be when he grew up. The reason the boy came to this school is for the car mechanics class. However, he was surprised to find daily fights between 2 gangs. The gang members traded fierce blows to their torsos and faces, even resorting to choking. When a student saw Hyung-ju, he asked why he wasn't joining the fight. Feeling scared, Hyung-ju tried to punch someone, only to get knocked out with 1 blow. As he lay on the ground, sick of everything, he saw Na Hwa-jin's face and thought it looked familiar. In the headmaster's office, the headmaster greeted Na Hwa-jin and offered him a drink. Hesitant to explain the school's situation, the headmaster was interrupted by Na Hwa-jin, who said he saw the dick measuring contest between classes. Meanwhile, in the gymnasium, car mechanic students were being kicked by a fellow student for not defeating anyone in the fights. Hyung-ju thought that if he had a time machine, he would go back and tell himself not to get involved with cars. The fights, which started to determine class hierarchy, escalated to grade dominance and eventually led to chaos. Despite the turmoil, Hyung-ju endured because of his love for car mechanics. Now in his 3rd year, he hoped the chaos would have ended. Lee Hong-sung, the alpha of the class with the worst grades, shouted that he would attain 1st place before graduating and swore this in front of his underclassmen. As he was about to kick a student, he recognized Hyung-ju, the class topper, and quickly asked him to stand up and be tough since he was a 3rd year. He then told Hyung-ju to relax, acknowledging his hard work, but suddenly turned and kicked him, making him fall. Lee Hong-sung called Hyung-ju an embarrassment, questioning his presence in a school where fists meant power, likening him to a maggot in a wolf's den. Na Hwa-jin entered the gymnasium and, upon seeing the scene, remarked that he never thought he would find such a ridiculous reason for fights. He told Lee Hong-sung that the school was a place for learning, not for stroking egos. When Lee Hong-sung called him an old geezer and asked about his identity, Na Hwa-jin introduced himself as the field inspector from the Bureau of Education. All the students except Lee Hong-sung knew about him. Shocked that Lee Hong-sung didn't recognize him from the news, Na Hwa-jin listened as Lee Hong-sung admitted he didn't watch any news. Lee Hong-sung then tried to punch Na Hwa-jin, only to be knocked out with a single blow. Na Hwa-jin called Hyung-ju to help him. In the electrical engineering club room, the grades alpha, Jo Hong-ji, lectured his classmates about the chaos caused by Lee Hong-sung at the start of the semester. He stated his goal was to crush the car engineering students and ensure they thought twice before challenging them again. He planned to ambush the car engineering students, targeting Lee Hong-sung himself while the others handled the rest, aiming to make electrical engineering the top class in the school. Suddenly, a voice over the announcement speaker introduced itself as Kim Hyung-ju, representing the car studies class, and threatened to take on every electrical engineering student by himself. Hearing this, the students rushed towards the gymnasium. As Jo Hong-ji kicked open the gymnasium door, he and those behind him were struck by Na Hwa-jin with a stick. He greeted them and asked everyone to calm down and take a seat, which were set up in the gymnasium along with the car mechanic students. Na Hwa-jin announced that starting today, both electrical and car engineering classes would have joint lessons led by himself, focusing on behavioral education. He dared any student to step up if they did not want to participate. When Jo Hong-ji hears about the class, he calls Na Hwa-jin out and questions his authority to make decisions. Na Hwa-jin responds by introducing himself as the field inspector of the Education Bureau. Jo Hong-ji quickly recalls who he is and asks if they are the second experiment batch. Na Hwa-jin celebrates finally getting some recognition. Jo Hong-ji asserts that they have more support and are not like weaker schools. Just as the electrical engineering students choose to exit the gymnasium, Na Hwa-jin throws his stick at Jo Hong-ji and seriously questions if he had dismissed them. Jo Hong-ji picks up the stick and threatens Na Hwa-jin, saying not to wake the sleeping lion, and that he would beat him to a pulp even if he is a teacher. Na Hwa-jin invites them to come at him, saying that his first lesson is about understanding his authority. Shocked by his words, Jo Hong-ji screams and swings the cane at Na Hwa-jin. Na Hwa-jin swiftly punches Jo Hong-ji's chin, sending him flying back. Na Hwa-jin comments on the anticlimactic scene, despising Jo Hong-ji for being too young for this. Other students gather around the knocked-out Jo Hong-ji. The second in hierarchy for his class orders everyone to attack Na Hwa-jin, ignoring his teacher status. Lee Hong-sung, observing from behind, thinks that Jo Hong-ji is now in the same situation he was 30 minutes ago. Na Hwa-jin begins caning the advancing students with speed and accuracy, hitting everyone on their butts. All the students fall to the floor after receiving hits from Na Hwa-jin. The second in hierarchy, mesmerized by Na Hwa-jin's speed, receives a special hit. Na Hwa-jin instructs them to take their seats if they don't want a second round. Na Hwa-jin distributes test papers to every student and says that school is for studying and not to play gang wars. He says that this test will decide their fate. Many students were seen confused with the content of the test, but for Kim Hyung-ju this is a piece of cake. He revealed his secret that he was the class first when he was in his previous school and that no one here knows about that. He submitted he test quickly, while the others were seen idling during the time of the test. Some even tried to answer some of the questions to their best interests. The next day, some students were seen running with a big tire tied to their backs on the playground in the hot sun, shouting the slogans that school is for learning and they'll no longer fight in the school and fighting gets them nothing. Those are the students who scored less than 59 in the test the previous day were third estate peasants. Lee Hong-sung is one of them. The students who scored between 60 and 90 were second estate nobles. Only 3 students, including Jo Hong-ji, were seen sitting in the stadium seats under the shade. The students who were running on the ground claim that they have completed 20 laps with the tire. They beg Kim Hyung-ju for the next task, who scored a perfect 100 marks, is the king. He commands them to make another 10 more laps. Meanwhile, the electrical engineering and car studies students had been collaborating to create new rules for the school. Students with average grades between 60 to 90 were given good food, while those with grades between 0 to 59 received low-quality, uncooked food in small quantities. Complaints about discrimination arose among the lower-grade students. Kim Hyung-ju, enjoying premium meals with exotic meat and fruits, relished his status as the number 1 alpha of the school, chosen by grade points. Lee Hong-sung and some other students threw away their meal plates, declaring that Na Hwa-jin had gone too far. Pointing a spanner at him, Hong-sung referenced the rebellion of 1882. Na Hwa-jin, with tears of joy, acknowledged this as a reward for becoming a teacher. He then beat every student who initiated the rebellion. Later, in the washroom, other students attempted to bully Hyung-ju, warning him that the teacher couldn't protect him forever. Just then, Na Hwa-jin arrived and declared that, according to the guidelines, peasants who tried to bully the king would receive divine punishment. He commanded everyone to gather in the gymnasium and made them do push-ups as punishment in front of Hyungju, while reciting slogans about not rejecting or hurting the king and how better grades lead to better treatment. Hyungju shouted at them to recite the slogans louder. Na Hwa-jin, surprised, noted that Hyungju had fully embraced his role. He even advised him to become a politician, recognizing his potential. Hyungju, shaking, asked if he could resign from his king post, fearing trouble after leaving school. He confessed that he had endured so much that he felt he would lose his sanity if he continued. Na Hwa-jin assured him that the school would be in a better place when he left. He also noted that reforming the kids alone wouldn't change the school. He questions him about the person responsible for making this old system. Jo Hongji comments Lee Hong-sung for being in rivalry with such a person. When he tries to get back at him, Jo Hongji tells him about the importance of this day, which is the lifting the suspension of Yang Kwan-hyuk. Lee Hong-sung remarked that Yang had brought a weapon to school and had been suspended for only 2 weeks. Jo Hongji replied that the school apparently wanted him back because he had taught them that strength was supreme, and now, with his return, that teacher was as good as dead. At that moment, the gymnasium door was knocked with such force that it caught everyone's attention. The doorknob broke, and the doors swung open to reveal a yellow-hooded figure. Apologizing for breaking the doorknob, Yang Kwan-hyuk, a third-year electrical engineering student, explained that he was told to return to school and found the door locked. Everyone there gets flustered on seeing him. He looks at the rules board and asks what is going on here. Na Hwa-jin recognizes the famous personality and says that he is late on his first day. Na Hwa-jin said that with a bit of work, he managed to mellow out, and also the principal has a lot to say since he is the cause. He asks him to bend over and drop the hammer. He drops the hammer and quickly tries to punch Na Hwa-jin, which he blocks it easily. He says that Na Hwa-jin is better than he looks, and the expression on his face clearly states that he will accept any challenge. When Na Hwa-jin didn't answer instantly, he asks if he is scared of him, who is not like the other students. Na Hwa-jin says that he expected this situation, deducing he'll be troublesome to deal with if his shoulders dealt that much force. He says that it is a party since they can really experience true education. The confrontation between Na Hwa-jin and Yang Kwan-hyuk escalated quickly. Na Hwa-jin decided to handle the situation through physical combat, dropping his cane to make the lesson more engaging. Yang Kwan-hyuk warned Na Hwa-jin not to take back his words, stating that if Na Hwa-jin lost, he would have to leave the school. Na Hwa-jin accepted this challenge. Yang Kwan-hyuk clenches his fists and says that he'll help him leave. He tries to make a lunge at him, which Na Hwa-jin dodges, and he returns his punch. Yang Kwan-hyuk quickly reacts and catches his face and smashes his face on the ground. Na Hwa-jin is seen knocked out on the ground. In the past, when Yang Kwan-hyuk is seen for the first time during his first-year battle, they understood that this guy will be the new legend for Gun High-Tech School. Not long after, he defeated all the second and third years, becoming a highest first-year ranked position in school for the first time in 8 years. While they are walking on the street, students from other schools commented on them for being controlled by a first year, also saying that they are so dumb to even fight. Yang Kwan-hyuk's influence spread across the whole area, making him the #1 strongest in the local area. 8 years ago, when the school's name was Gun High School, the seniors who controlled the area were called as Gun Mongol Team. However, he is sure that he can surpass the legend of Gun High School 8 years ago. Back in the gymnasium, students celebrated Na Hwa-jin's defeat. However, when the alpha of both classes approached Yang Kwan-hyuk to congratulate him, he attacked them instead, showing his anger towards them for their weakness and the breaking of the ranking system. Yang Kwan-hyuk then addressed the students, expressing his intention to challenge the area once again and reclaim the title from 2 years ago. He warned them that the ranking system was meant to train them, not to be targets for teachers. He vowed to create a new legend, surpassing the previous one from 8 years ago. Na Hwa-jin, now recovered and laughing on the ground, mocked Yang Kwan-hyuk's ambition. He teased him about going home to brag to his mother about conquering the area. This angered Yang Kwan-hyuk, who tried to punch Na Hwa-jin again. However, Na Hwa-jin dodged and countered with an elbow, breaking 2 of Yang Kwan-hyuk's ribs. Na Wajin explained the law of action and reaction, emphasizing that playing with power would lead to being destroyed by power. He touched Yang Kwanhyok's ribs, noting that he wouldn't be able to fight for 2 to 3 weeks. Na Wajin then declared that Yang Kwanhyok would not serve as the king's personal servant. He wanted Yang Kwanhyok to experience being at the bottom of his own ranking system, teaching him a lesson about the consequences of seeking power through force. The Gun-Hai Rebel Alliance gathered around a table, who looked like the top dogs of all the schools around, discussing the aftermath of Yang Kwanhyok's actions. They feared that Yang Kwanhyok would target them next and proposed joining forces with other groups to take down Gun-Hai School. They acknowledged Yang Kwanhyok's prowess, recalling how he single-handedly dealt with 20 members of Sorok High. They discuss all the inside ways to get rid of his authority. Just as they were discussing, the top dog Sorok High enters the discussion with bruises and wounds from the previous day, says that there is nothing that can be solved with money. Kim Hyung-ju is witnessing an undeliverable sight of Yang Kwanhyok calmly following his orders and serving him like a butler. At first, he retaliated and abused him continuously. Then Na Wajin enters and gives him a punishment for talking bad with the king by stimulating his nose with a cat toy. When Yang Kwanhyok sneezed, he realized the pain caused by it since his ribs were cracked. He handles that car toy to the king so that he can punish all forms of evil. Yang Kwanhyok and everyone who has gathered on his request to go after the teacher together, to which none of them are willing to do, since the top person himself got beaten up pretty badly. Some ask him to do it himself. Yang Kwanhyok was unable to reign over others once he got hurt. But that wasn't the only thing that changed. The rest of the students began to work towards their academics and sharing knowledge in order to increase this level to grab benefits. After spending 2 weeks packed together like a tin, the line between the electrical engineering and car mechanics calls faded and started getting stronger together. The king thought that if things stay like this here, then Mr. Na would not stay longer, which fears him the most. The headmaster, after seeing those students, praises Na Wajin for his work and also managed to calm down the troublemaker Yang Kwanhyok. The headmaster claims that by seeing his students mend their old ways make him proud as a teacher. Na Wajin says that his innocent side is getting to him and questions his thought on the change of the kid Yang Kwanhyok. Yang Kwanhyok, while waiting for his ribs to heal, planned revenge against the teacher and those who abandoned him. His actions caught the attention of individuals from Sorok High, who saw him carrying bags and compared it to seeing a UFO. Their confidence came from their belief that they would get what they paid for, hinting at his plans for revenge and hiring assistance from gangsters known as the hired guns. One of the gangsters says that there are limits to what he can do and that limit had reached the end at this point. Just as her was about to complete, Yang Kwanhyok starts attacking. Yang Kwanhyok says that no one is immune to punches and tries to hit another gangster. He catches his punch with his bare fist and acknowledges him for his hype. He says that kids like him were a dime for a dozen back in his days and punches him on his side, cracking good ribs again. The main gangster feels wrong to take down a promising young man from his alma mater and getting paid for this job. When Yang Kwanhyok asked about his alma mater, the gangster replies that he has graduated from gun vocational 8 years ago, and the kids back then used to call them the Mongol Army and called him the Great Khan, who is the top dog of Gun High-Tech High School 8 years ago. Yang Kwanhyok is shocked to see the Great Khan of Guwon, who crushed this area years ago. He claims that everyone will be talking about the fight between them after tonight, and he starts attacking him to see who is the stronger man. The Khan drops his cigarette and kicks Yang Kwanhyok faster than his punch can reach him. Khan says not to flatter himself and continues to hit him, this time on his neck area. The first time Yang Kwanhyok got violent was in his first grade. 3 older kids are bullying him and saying that he is not allowed to play in that playground. One of the kids questions the other about why a hobo like him is staying in their apartment complex. The other kid says that his mother commented on Kwanhyok's family's poor status and that they should have never made a kid. Insulting Kwanhyok's parents have made him get violent then. The kid's mother is complaining about his violent acts to Kwanhyok's mother. It is then he realized that he'd never feel inferior again if he is stronger. Every other person who had disrespected him and his family due to their financial status soon begged for mercy to him since he was always on top. This is the first time a man had hardened to his punches. The gangster is continuously beating him on his face, making it into a pulp. He tells him to stop and says that he wins in his low voice. Yang Kwan-hyuk continues to say that he will never mess with anyone from now on and would quit fighting. The students from Sorak High says that money really is the answer to anything and that they did the task perfectly, even making Yang Kwan-hyuk to cry like a little girl. The gangster offers their safety till their graduation for an extra fee, advising them that punks like him apologize now and cause trouble when they are fine after some days. Later that day, in an isolated construction site, one of the gangsters catches Kwan-hyuk's right hand, trying to break his wrist so that he'd never fight again. They even brought along Hyung-ju to close his mouth. Hyung-ju never interacted with him until his hierarchy system, which made his life a hell and resent on him for making his school an awful place since he is not a good fighter. But now, just as the gangsters were about to break his wrist, he leaps in between them and gets hurt by them, trying to protect him. Everyone is speechless to see his act. Hyung-ju says to leave him and that they have gone too far. He refuses to move aside when the gangsters ask him to. They start thrashing him for nearly 10 minutes. Kwan-hyuk wonders about his reaction with the gangsters since they were not so close to be that grateful to him. In that time, his heart rate increases, which pings his location to Na Wajin's phone. The gangsters claim that he is tougher than Kwan-hyuk since he held for a longer time. They ask him why he does bother him even though he was bullied. He says that he hates him, but everything has its limits. Right at that moment, Wajin arrives at that scene and asks about the situation to him. The injured Hyung-ju briefs that these are gangsters who were paid to beat Kwan-hyuk. He looks at the gangsters and claim that they do look older with wrinkles to be called students. One of them quickly reacts to his comment and says that he is in his 20s and threatens him to watch his words or else he will stick his knife into him. Na Wajin quickly thrashes his hand and breaks his elbow. He catches his falling head and thrusts it into the ground. He says that he can get off some steam on them since they are gangsters and not students, while continuing to beat his head onto the ground. This shocks the Great Khan and Yang Kwan-hyuk.